Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Lunatics Radio Hour podcast. I'm Abby Brinker, sitting here with Alan Kudan.
Hello.
And today we have a Lunatics Library episode for you, where we are going to feature several quote-unquote found footage horror stories.
Abby, there's a word for this.
Epistolary.
Come on, I was going to say it. I remember because you told us last
Yeah, we
time.
learned it last episode. If you missed it, last episode we talked all about the history of found footage as a subgenre within horror. But today, as we like to do, we're going to feature some works that illustrate that theme. I will say it's a little bit different, right, between written works and film, horror movies. But I think these stories both illustrate the theme very well.
I mean, we discussed that like one of the staples of found footage horror is an excuse to have poor cinematography, low budgets, all that kind of stuff. When you're writing, none of that comes into play. Or am I wrong? I feel like you have to be even
craftier.
Yeah, you have
Totally.
to write in all these different styles. I mean, I'm really just pulling from Dracula, but you have to write from so many different characters' perspectives. You're in their heads, their writing styles. You're not even pulling like a Game of Thrones where you're with this character now. Instead, you have to really like change their wording and their little nuances and everything to make it, if you want to make it feel alive.
Sure. I think even that's like a very specific example, but even if you're writing some sort of work that maybe shifts between prose and newspaper articles.
Prose. That's the word. That's the word I was trying to think of.
Or diary entries, to your point, or patient logs, or any other type of mechanism that can be used to be quote unquote epistolary. So yeah, I do think it takes another layer of craftiness in it, you know, and I'm sure there's always like this debate, right? That sometimes, and it depends on the writer and the creator, but that sometimes having constraints makes it easier to create something, right? That's the idea of like the 48-hour film festival, that
Sure.
giving people constraints and guidelines sometimes helps the creative process, but that would be a question for each individual writer.
Okay, you were a literary major.
I was.
What is the term when, so specifically talking about, not Game of Thrones, that's the show, Song of Ice and Fire, that's the books. When you jump from character to character, but you're not in first person. It's just they're the main, you get to know, you get to be in their head, but it's not told from first person. What is that called?
Well, I could look it up and come across as really smart, but I'm going to be honest. I haven't read those books, so I don't know the exact way that they're written, but there's first person narration, there's third person, which is sort of when you're observing one specific character. And then there's like omniscient narration, which is somebody who can kind of go inside the brain of multiple characters, can set the scene. It's like a narrator as another character, but not an identified character. And I tend to write that way typically.
But in this case, you get to be inside the brain of one character at a time.
So that's just the point of view is switching every chapter.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what that is.
There's a term for it, though. There's got to be. And you're a literary major.
So I looked this up. I gave in. And it's not. It said on the website that I found that typically people assume that it's omniscient, but it's actually third person limited, and it's told from multiple people's point of views.
Third person limited. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, because I've encountered, I mean, maybe just because it's just such a popular book series that it's kind of inspired lots of other novels.
Sure.
But I feel like I keep encountering this, and it drives me nuts. Because I mean, but it's
You mean the style drives you nuts?
the style where you're telling one story where you're with one character and then you jump completely to something else.
Yeah.
It's like you just have a whole bunch of novels that are completely separate and they all come and intertwine at some point.
I'll say what I don't like about this, because this has happened to me twice now in my life, where I'm deep into a series, like several books in, and it starts to do this. So Twilight does it, A Court of Rose and Thorns does this, and it's something where like the first two books, it's told from one character's point of view, and then suddenly later it switches. And I just like, I get used to a certain style, and I don't mind it if it started like that from the beginning, but I think when you sideline readers after 2 books, it can be like off-putting.
Well, so what I'm talking about is it switches every chapter. What you're talking about is like different novels.
No. It switches every chapter, but only starting in the 3rd book.
Oh.
Like book 1 and 2 are told from Feyre's perspective, and then suddenly in book 3, every character has a chapter and it switches around. I think sometimes maybe what happens is like the story gets so big that they want to explore what's happening in other parts of this world or realm that character doesn't have access to. So I understand that as like suddenly this world blows up and there's a war and there's all these different factions, right? And like the story's a lot bigger than it was in the first 2 novels. But it is off-putting, I think, for me as a reader, for me personally. Maybe other people really like it.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah, totally.
Oftentimes that literary device is used in a very poor way where they choose a character's perspective that I don't find interesting.
Exactly. It's exactly that. It's like I don't care what Jacob thinks. I want to know what Edward and Bella think. I don't care what Jacob thinks.
Oh.
You know?
Did that happen?
Yeah. Like I'm not interested.
Oh, Twilight. Gotcha. Yeah. I don't remember the novel, but there was something where a portion of the book switches to their like robot companion's perspective.
Yeah.
And that was so freaking cool.
Sure.
The robot didn't think at all like a human would and would interpret situations that we had previously seen time and time again from other characters' perspectives. And this is how it's normally dealt with. And just it's dealt with completely differently because it's not a human brain. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. I also had an epiphany about the found footage subgenre after we recorded last episode.
You did.
Which was
that was a question. You did?
I did, yes. Which was, as I was writing our Patreon newsletter, I kind of put the pieces together. And I don't know, maybe this is like not really an epiphany, but my thought is this. I was trying to sort of capture why I really like found footage as a genre and why I'm drawn to it. And I sort of drew a comparison to true crime. And I know, before everyone comes at me, that true crime is true crime, right? And that this is fiction horror. It's totally different.
If it's on TV, it's all fake.
But I mean, even podcasts, right? I usually consume true crime in the form of podcasts, not in the form of documentaries or anything else. But I think there's kind of like a similar human interest in experiencing horror or being interested in a horror that's presented as real and that is presented as like breaking the wall and that you're there. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference when you watch Blair Witch than when you watch Hereditary. And I think it's easier to suspend the disbelief with Blair Witch and put yourself in that perspective. Same with a true crime story, but very different from watching a film like Midsommar or Hereditary or Get Out, where it clearly feels like it's a Hollywood film.
It does make it more difficult to remove yourself from the film.
Right. And obviously there's a whole spectrum, right? You have things like Cloverfield that are way more produced than things like Blair Witch. But I think that's like inherently why me as a human is drawn to that sort of storytelling. Sure. I think it's like a similar reason why me as a human is drawn to true crime.
It instantly becomes more relatable.
Right, exactly. And scarier, right, in some ways.
I'm thinking even the sci-fi examples we watched for the episode.
Sure.
You know, what was the Apollo 19?
Apollo 18.
Apollo 18. Like I've never been in a lunar lander. I've been around one, but not in one.
Brag.
But all of a sudden, I'm experiencing this horror from this perspective, and like, yeah, relatable.
Right. You can feel what that character is supposedly feeling more, I think, easily.
It's kind of just a softball to make the audience feel what the characters are supposed to feel.
Yeah, totally. Anyway, so that was just my little thought that I wanted to share.
Okay, enough analysis on the found footage genre. That is what the other episodes are for, and people don't come here for that.
Sure.
I feel like we're betraying our audience.
Okay, so Alan, you spent a lot of time last episode talking about your dislike of a certain epistolary audiobook.
I did?
Dracula.
Oh, yeah, fuck Dracula.
Well,
great book. Bad audiobook.
We present to you an excerpt from Dracula.
Okay, but...
Yeah.
But...
Yeah.
It's going to have one narrator.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
His name is Jon C. Cook of the Fido Podcast.
We got Jon C. Cook of the Fido Podcast.
Yes.
See, if Jon C. Cook of the Fido podcast did the official audiobook
Of Dracula.
of Dracula,
He'd be a billionaire.
this book might be the most famous audiobook of all time. Right up there with, like, the Bible.
2 classics.
If Jon C. Cook of the Fido podcast did the official audiobook of Dracula, I guarantee I would have a completely different opinion about it.
Absolutely.
A much more positive opinion. I want to make that abundantly clear.
One thing I did, so I tried to pick an excerpt that was a little exciting.
Is he going to do the Dracula voice?
He is.
Yes.
It's a little horrifying. He also does another accent.
Oh?
Yes.
Which character?
I'll let it all come together
come on.
organically. But very, very, very grateful as always for Jon's time. I think it came out great. And it's a very short little excerpt from the novel. We're not going to give the whole cow away with this episode, but it does.
Give the whole cow away?
You know that saying.
Yeah, give the whole cow away.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to give you a taste of the milk. It's
Got
a
it.
saying.
Okay, good. I've never heard that. Go on.
But I thought that I picked a section of the novel that was both exciting in terms of what's going on and demonstrates very well the mechanic that we're talking about today. You get kind of the rhythm of the epistolary novel and writing style with this and how it plays in to horror, right? Because it's almost like with every entry, it's a cliffhanger. And so I'm excited to have Jon do some fun voices and bring this very flat type of horror to life. This is around, if anyone's like a super Dracula expert, this is in the chapter 4 area. That's where we're hovering today.
Oh, chapter 4. Here we go.
So, somewhat close to the beginning, but enough is happening that we have some fear in our blood. Here we go. Roll the tape.
Excellent blood reference.
Dracula, written by Bram Stoker, read by Jon C. Cook.
Jonathan Harker's Journal. I awoke in my own bed. If it be that I had not dreamt, the Count must have carried me here. I tried to satisfy myself on the subject, but could not arrive at any unquestionable result. To be sure, there were certain small evidences, such as that my clothes were folded and laid by in a manner which was not my habit. My watch was still unwound, and I am rigorously accustomed to wind it the last thing before going to bed, and many such details. But these things are no proof, for they may have been evidences that my mind was not as usual, and from some cause or another I had certainly been much upset. I must watch for proof. Of one thing I am glad. If it was the Count that carried me here and undressed me, he must have been hurried in his task, for my pockets are intact. I am sure this diary would have been a mystery to him which he would not have brooked. He would have taken or destroyed it. As I look round this room, although it has been to me so full of fear, it is now a sort of sanctuary, for nothing can be more dreadful than those awful women who are, waiting to suck my blood. 18 May. I have been down to look at that room again in daylight, for I must know the truth. When I got to the doorway at the top of the stairs, I found it closed. It had been so forcibly driven against the jamb that part of the woodwork was splintered. I could see that the bolt of the lock had not been shot, but the door is fastened from the inside. I fear it was no dream, and must act on this surmise. 19 May. I am surely in the toils. Last night the Count asked me in the suavest tones to write 3 letters, one saying that my work here was nearly done, and that I should start for home within a few days, another that I was starting on the next morning from the time of the letter, and the third that I had left the castle and arrived at Bistritz. I would fain have rebelled, but felt that in the present state of things it would be madness to quarrel openly with the Count whilst I am so absolutely in his power, and to refuse would be to excite his suspicion and to arouse his anger. He knows that I know too much, and that I must not live, lest I be dangerous to him. My only chance is to prolong my opportunities. Something may occur which will give me a chance to escape. I saw in his eyes something of that gathering wrath which was manifest when he hurled that fair woman from him. He explained to me that posts were few and uncertain, and that my writing now would ensure ease of mind to my friends. And he assured me, with so much impressiveness, that he would countermand the later letters, which would be held over at Bistritz until due time, in case chance would admit of my prolonging my stay, that to oppose him would have been to create new suspicion. I therefore pretended to fall in with his views, and asked him what dates I should put on the letters. He calculated a minute, and then said, "The first should be June 12, the second June 19, and the third June 29. I now know the span of my life. God help me. 28 May. There is a chance of escape, or at any rate of being able to send word home. A band of Cisgani have come to the castle, and are encamped in the courtyard. These Cisgani are gypsies. I have notes of them in my book. They are peculiar to this part of the world, though allied to the ordinary gypsies all the world over. There are thousands of them in Hungary and Transylvania who are almost outside the law. They attach themselves as a rule to some great noble or boyar, and call themselves by his name. They are fearless and without religion, save superstition, and they talk only their own varieties of the Romany tongue. I shall write some letters home, and shall try to get them to have them posted. I have already spoken them through my window to begin acquaintanceship. They took their hats off and made obeisance in many signs, which, however, I could not understand any more than I could their spoken language. I have written the letters. Mina's is in shorthand, and I simply ask Mr. Hawkins to communicate with her. To her I have explained my situation, but without the horrors which I may only surmise. It would shock and frighten her to death were I to expose my heart to her. Should the letters not carry, then the Count shall not yet know my secret or the extent of my knowledge. I have given the letters. I threw them through the bars of my window with a gold piece, and made what signs I could to have them posted. The man who took them pressed them to his heart and bowed, and then put them in his cap. I could do no more. I stole back to the study and began to read. As the Count did not come in, I have written here, "The Count has come." He sat down beside me and said in his smoothest voice as he opened 2 letters, "The sea has given me these, of which, though I know not whence they come, I shall, of course, take care. See," he must have looked at it, "one is from you, and to my friend Peter Hawkins, the other—" Here he caught sight of the strange symbols as he opened the envelope, and the dark look came into his face, and his eyes blazed wickedly. "The other is a vile thing, an outrage upon friendship and hospitality. It is not signed. Well, so it cannot matter to us." And he calmly held letter and envelope in the flame of the lamp till they were consumed. Then he went on. "The letter to Hawkins, that I shall of course send on, since it is yours. Your letters are sacred to me. Your pardon, my friend, that unknowingly I did break the seal. Will you not cover it again?" He held out the letter to me, and with a courteous bow handed me a clean envelope. I could only redirect it and hand it to him in silence. When he went out of the room, I could only hear the key turn softly. A minute later I went over and tried it, and the door was locked. When, an hour or 2 after, the Count came quietly into the room, his coming awakened me, for I had gone to sleep on the sofa. He was very courteous and very cheery in his manner, and seeing that I had been sleeping, he said, "So, my friend, are you tired? Get to bed. There is the surest rest. I may not have the pleasure to talk tonight, since there are many labours to me, but you will sleep, I pray." I passed to my room and went to bed, and, strange to say, slept without dreaming. Despair has its own calms. 31 May. This morning when I woke, I thought I would provide myself with some paper and envelopes from my bag, and keep them in my pocket, so that I might write in case I should get an opportunity. But again a surprise, again a shock. Every scrap of paper was gone. and with it all my notes, my memoranda relating to railways and travel, my letter of credit, in fact all that might be useful to me were I once outside the castle. I sat and pondered a while, and then some thought occurred to me, and I made search of my portmanteau and in the wardrobe where I had placed my clothes. The suit in which I had travelled was gone, and also my overcoat and rug. I could find no trace of them anywhere. This looked like some new scheme of villainy.
John Cook with a British accent.
So this is a perfect example of how a good audiobook is only made good by a good narrator. I love that. That was great.
He knocked it out of the park once again.
Couldn't you just picture Jonathan Harker like crouched over his desk, scratching away with his little quill?
He weirdly looks just like John Cook.
I guess so. I mean, wait, when did people stop using quills?
It's hard to say. I don't know. Maybe the 1800s?
I have no idea. I guess what would replace it? The pen?
Yeah, the pen.
There's no in between. It went straight from quill to pen?
Well, there's like dip fountain pens.
The fountain pen, sure.
Or you dip an ink still, just doesn't have the feathers.
An ink still?
You dip it into ink,
right?
But it doesn't have the feathers. It's like that's the in between.
Oh, gotcha. So a fountain pen has the ink inside. Does it? No, you dip it still. I don't know.
I don't know the names. I'm just saying there is an in between the pens we use today that have ink within versus dipping something that's not a quill.
Right, the little metal bit.
Yeah, into
gotcha.
An inkwell. Yeah.
Interesting. Anyways, that's what I was picturing.
Very good.
It makes you really want to go back and like read Dracula, but like read it.
Yeah.
Or just, is John doing the entire thing?
No.
So he did this just for us?
He did.
Oh, that was very nice.
But there is a newsletter that I subscribe to called Dracula Daily, where every day they send you a chapter of Dracula.
It's the most Abby thing I've ever heard.
I also subscribe to Poe Daily, where every day they send you, or it's not every single day, but anyway, it's kind of like a fun way to read a novel that's really long or kind of, again, like we've said a billion times, outdated perhaps in some of its writing style. It makes it very snackable and doable, but you do end up sometimes when you're busy with like a bunch of days where you have to catch up on it.
So I'm just picturing you every morning, you wake up, you get your cup of coffee, you check out your Dracula Daily, you check out your Big Boat blog.
That's right, Tugsters.
And Tugsters, and that's your day.
Yeah, that's my morning.
No, that's your day.
Yeah,
that's a little taste of the Abby Brinker retirement.
Oh my gosh, a dream.
Also, just a quick shout out to Bram Stoker. He did write a pretty good book. We're giving all this credit to John, and while credit is definitely due,
sure,
Bram did a good job.
Good job, Bram. We have one more epistolary story for you today. This one is truly horrifying.
Oh.
It is a new writer on Lunatics Radio Hour, his debut, though I suspect we will be featuring him more often this year.
I'll be the judge of that.
I will literally be the judge of that, but...
That is true.
But I am very, very, very thrilled to feature the work today of Duncan Overton.
Great name.
Great name. Duncan is an educational psychologist who specializes in qualitative research and narrative inquiry, which...
I thought you were going to say in epistolary novels.
But I actually think so. Once you hear the story, you'll understand more. But he's primed to write about like psychological horror, and specifically horror that like not only psychological horror and like thriller, but like psychology based horror that takes place in asylums, things like that, which is what we're going to get today. His work spans other genres within horror as well. Duncan loves the writing of Kurt Vonnegut, Terry Pratchett, and Neil Gaiman. And his favorite horror movie, I thought this was fun, is Forbidden Planet with Leslie Nielsen, or Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, which I know are top on your list as well. He currently resides and teaches in Southern Appalachia, which we know it's not Appalachia from our friends at Pizza Rice, it's Appalachia. I'm very thrilled to feature his work today. This is actually 4 chapters of a larger piece, but it kind of stands alone really well and tells this story that I have a lot to say about, but I'm going to reserve comment until after.
Okay, let's do it.
You can never return. A Hillcrest Asylum Story, Chapters 1 through 4. Written by Duncan Overton. Read by Tessa McKnight.
Hillcrest Asylum guards a slow, winding stretch of the Tennessee River. The main administration building stands 4 stories tall and casts ominous shadows over the nearby rolling hills. Originally built in 1846 from local limestone quarries as a hospital for the insane, Hillcrest has changed hands and names many times, with new buildings constructed with each change. Currently standing as a 10-structure complex, Hillcrest is now a privately owned mental health institute dedicated to serving the East Tennessee area. Chapter 1. Time Travel Isn't Real. Initial Intake File Patient 2407. Time travel isn't really impossible. It just requires a different way of thinking. A way of thinking that most people just can't wrap their brains around. The problem doesn't exist with getting to the future, it's coming back. Going back in time causes all sorts of problems, things that I can't really get into at this time. But the fun of time travel doesn't really start until you get to the future. There are many different time periods one can jump to when going forward, or at least that's what it seemed to me. But there is really only one truth about time travel, and that's what I hope to explain. Warm afternoon light trickled into Dr. Sutton's small office. The newest member of Hillcrest's staff has spent her recent days becoming acquainted with her caseload and the asylum grounds, walking while reading and listening to file recordings. A recent graduate from Harvard, specializing in abnormal psychological conditions, Dr. Sutton was hired to take over for her predecessor, who retired after 60 years of service. Patient 2407 caught her eye. Something about time travel and the calmness of the patient tickled the back of her mind. Drawing the black Olympus recorder from her pristine white coat, Dr. Sutton pressed the record button as an involuntary reaction. Clinical report patient 2407. Initial intake report and recordings are interesting. It is not what is said, although that is interesting enough, but it is how he has told his story. There is a calmness in his words and manner that make me believe he is not quote-unquote crazy, but actually telling us what he believes to be true. Dr. Sutton paused her recording session, standing up and strolling across the office to check a couple of resource texts. Making her way back to her desk, she collects a folder and pen and turns to leave the room. A final pat-down of all pockets and a step through the door brings her into the hallway of Hillcrest Wing C. Hillcrest Wing C lies south off the primary administration tower. The patients in Wing C are typically non-violent and under minimal supervision. Still, Dr. Sutton made sure not to carry any sharp implements on her. Flipping through the file of patient 2407 as she walked down the hall, she turns to a different entry in the file. Patient observation by Dr. Amira. Green and striped. I always wondered why this particular colour of green and why striped. It can't be good for the patients. It reminds me of the inside of a carnival tunnel. The ones with the rotating outsides and stable centre that makes you feel dizzy and unsteady. Maybe that's it. Maybe they want the patients to feel this way so that it adds to their pre-existing symptoms. Dr. Sutton withdrew the Olympus recorder for the second time in 10 minutes. Personal observation. Dr. Sutton reviewing patient 2407's file. Patient 2407 raises a valid point. It really is an awkward sensation walking down these halls with the striped patterns and quote-unquote institutionalized green. Seeing the blank masks that some patients call faces here and there, no life behind the eyes, just mush. Hopped up on so many medications and different types of treatments, maybe the Spanish Inquisition just morphed into treatment therapies for mental illnesses. The double doors at the end of the 2-story building were only a couple of minutes' walk from Dr. Sutton's new office. After pocketing her recorder, she pulled out a small moleskin journal from the file. Backing into the left side of the door, she emerged into a small, manicured hedge patio, a solitary bench her destination. The placard on the bench reads, "Dedicated to the memory of Dr. Hillcrest," which every bench and statue around Hillcrest Asylum bears. To the side, a giant oak tree casts a lazy afternoon shadow over the patio area. Dr. Sutton carefully lays the file on the bench, taking the journal with her as she begins tracing a path following the limestone pavers. As she circles around the bench, she opens the journal, letting the pages fall to a well-worn spot. Chapter 2. Journal Entries. Day number 140, Experiment 2469. Today we ran another trial on the same parameters as last week's trial. We have no idea of where the watermelon ended up, still having trouble with the exact pinpoint of re-emergence. However, we did manage to break through the barrier of teleporting the whole object and not just a partial sample. Still, I'm concerned about when and where the object will appear. By our calculations, it should appear in our emergence platform, but as previously stated, we have been having difficulties getting the exact timing down. Day number 150, Experiment 2479. Today we received another shipment of fuel. Can't exactly say what fuel it is, since I really shouldn't be keeping this journal, but something needs to be recorded in case our crazy ideas come to fruition, which might happen sooner than imagined. An amazing event happened. The watermelon returned. It returned on our platform in the same state that it left. After running our tests, we cut it open and it was as fresh as the day we sent it off. Only a 10-day delay. That means we should be able to get everything under control for the first biological experiment soon. Day number 243, Experiment 3895. We have been working like crazy since our breakthrough. I mean, live biological samples sent through our machine and out the other side of our machine without any problems, and this is big. We can control the time on it. We're able to pinpoint the exact time we want our test subjects to re-emerge with 100% accuracy now. It's fantastic. Our sponsor will be coming by the lab tomorrow for a demonstration. I got lucky and drew the short straw, so I get to be the first person ever to be sent by controlled time teleportation. I can't wait. We will finally get to prove all of our theories. Day number 244, Test Run 1. Night before the test, and I can't sleep. Guess that's to be expected. Everything we have tested up to this point has been a success. All the numbers look right. Every time we check it, it just works. I think I'm excited, but there is still this feeling of dread. I assume it's the leap into the unknown I'm just not ready for. Chapter 3, Meeting. Marking her place in the journal, Dr. Sutton sat down on the bench. She flipped to the beginning of the journal and reread back to the current entry. Closing the journal, and her eyes, she tilted her head back and began to visualize the story. After a moment, she ran her fingers over the black journal, opening her eyes. What she had read to this point between the weathered bindings read like a bad made-for-TV movie. The plot to some hack screenplay about a time traveller? Laughable, she thought. The whole premise was laughable. Who in their right mind would ever take this seriously? These thoughts came rushing into her consciousness, yet there remained an uneasiness. There was a believable quality to his story, a calmness in the recordings of his initial intake that point to sanity, not delusional fugue states. The case file stated that his background was in quantum mechanics, a PhD in fact, and work history to match. Prestigious laboratories around the globe, private sector consortiums and think tanks. His final employer, she noticed, leafing through the pages of patient 2407's file, was redacted. At least all but the dates of employment. Dr. Sutton realized that the end date coincides with his initial intake date at Hillcrest. A coincidence? Maybe, her internal conspiracy theorist screamed. She silenced that voice. And yet a feeling primal in nature welled up as the pages fell back into the folder. A picture of patient 2407 coming to rest paper-clipped to the front of the documents. That picture was off, she thought. Something wasn't right with the eyes, hair, nose, something. Just can't put my finger on it, she mumbled. No, I have seen him before. A rumble of thunder in the distance rolled across the sky. Looking up, Dr. Sutton could just make out a thunderhead in the distance. Guess I better go back inside, she said, to no one in particular. It looked like another hot summer shower was heading her way. The smell of damp earth swirled around her. Guess I better meet my first patient, she remarked to a squirrel who had paused in a moment of foraging to watch her as she made her way back into Hillcrest Wing C. Day number 244. My PDA survived the trip, but I'm not sure I did. This doesn't look like our laboratory. It's too derelict and things have been moved. Also, the fact no one's here is a little disconcerting. I've called out to everyone, but no one is answering me. I am extremely tired. Must be a side effect from the lack of sleep and time teleportation. I think I'll take a nap in the office and search for clues later. Still not sure why I'm so tired. No other test subjects showed any signs of fatigue. And where is everyone? This is not funny. Woke up suddenly, only asleep for a few hours. Not sure why I woke up, but I feel really uneasy now. I'm glad my PDA made it so I can record this. Our lab is definitely abandoned. No one is here. I've checked everywhere and found no one. But I still feel like I'm being watched. Just some nagging feeling. Maybe I should check outside, but it still isn't light out and all of the windows show nothing outside except darkness. I'm starting to think something may have gone terribly wrong. Hope not, though. This can't be good. Day number 245. Finally worked up the courage to make it outside. The sky was unusually red, definitely not a good sign. The sun was up, or maybe it was the moon. I can't tell. Everything is so run down. All of the buildings surrounding our labs are demolished, or in the process of decay, and I haven't seen a single person yet. It's all so quiet and still. No air movement or any sound. I think I'm dreaming. That must be it. I'm dreaming. This is all just a bad dream, and any moment now I'll wake up in my bed and everything will be all right. Okay, this is definitely not a dream. I just punched myself and it really hurt, so where the hell am I? Day number 246. I must have passed out from stress or whatever, but somehow I ended up back inside the lab. I'm going to try and keep it together. Hopefully I can figure something out. Okay, checklist of things I have and know. 1, I have my PDA. 2, no power anywhere I can see, no lights, no water. 3, I haven't seen another person or heard any sounds of life, human or animal. 4, the air is still and stagnant. It tastes like Jell-O without flavour. 5, everything is tinted red, even the sky, except at night. How can I tell it's night? Everything is black, no light, no red, no nothing. 6, I am certain I am being watched, but I can't find any evidence to back it up, just a feeling. Okay, I napped for a few hours after what I thought was noon, according to the placement of the sun, and now it is dark again. The only light source I have is my PDA. I can't find anything else, especially in the dark. The light from my PDA only extends a few inches from the screen, and then it gets swallowed by the darkness. I think this may turn out very bad for me. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Day number 247. I never thought I would be happy to see the red light back, but anything beats the darkness. I don't know what woke me up, the light or the sound. At least I think it was a sound. I found a bottle of water on the desk today. I don't remember ever seeing it there, and I don't think I should drink it, but I am so thirsty. The water is the best thing I've ever tasted. I think I can last a few more days if I portion it out. I think I'm going to check out some of the other buildings today. Okay, something or someone is definitely watching me. I heard a sound like a camera turning to track me as I entered the building across the street. It's a convenience store that I thought would have food and water. It was just as empty and run down as the lab, but that sound was everywhere. It seemed to follow me no matter where I went. But once I left, it stopped. It didn't start up again once I went back in. I may just be hallucinating, but I think, I'm certain, I'm positive I'm being watched. Day 249. Okay, I'm trying to conserve battery power, so it's been 2 days since I wrote. Same thing at the convenience store happened in 2 other buildings I explored. I think I may have seen an actual person today, but I couldn't find them. I think I'm really losing it. Day 250. Something happened today, and I think I understand what's happening. Some of our previous experiments, especially the earlier ones, we lost a lot of things we tried to teleport. We never found them. A bacon sandwich of mine was stolen and thrown into the machine as a joke, and it never returned. Well, a bacon sandwich just appeared here in the emergence platform. It tasted delicious. Somehow it arrived without any power, but the sound I heard when the water bottle appeared accompanied this. I surmise that I am stuck in some sort of pocket of time. Something in the input data must have created this pocket for items that did not have a proper exit trajectory. I can only wait to see if my hypothesis is correct. If it is, then the next item that should show up will be a large quantity of partial fruit. Day 260. Thanks to the fruit we sent through, I have been able to sustain myself. We sent these things in through weeks and months apart, but they are arriving within hours of each other. The next thing that should arrive is the watermelon. I was able to shred part of my pants and found a pen that worked. I wrote out a message, and when the watermelon shows up, I'll send it back with a message, and hopefully it will help. All right. Definitely not right. I just saw a group of people outside walking the streets. I want to make this absolutely clear that they were people, not shadows or some hallucination. They even looked up at me through the window. I couldn't see their faces because of the white hoods pulled over them, but I knew they were looking at me. I wanted to go out and talk to them, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to miss the watermelon. To be continued.
First of all, another amazing narration from Tessa McKnight.
Did you tell me this was going to be a time travel story?
I told you nothing.
Because I love time travel stories.
I know. That was a little added bonus
that
for you.
That was pretty cool.
You loved that, huh?
Yes, I did. In fact, I think we need to do a whole thing on time travel horror.
Oh, we could do that.
Is there enough? There's got to be.
Oh, I'm sure.
Time travel's always scary.
Yeah, it is.
When it goes awry, you know.
We can dabble in science fiction, too. I think that's within our jurisdiction.
No, just time travel.
No, I mean instead of horror.
Well, sure. Yeah, but...
Because time travel is inherently science fiction.
Yeah, and I feel like every time travel movie outside of like Hot Tub Time Machine like has aspects of like horror.
Sure.
Of
and
just
science
like
fiction.
of like it's thriller, you know?
Sure.
Because like it's exciting. Things go wrong.
The stakes are high.
Yeah, and in this one, I was getting not that this is a time travel movie, but like I Am Legend vibes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When you're just like thrust into a society that's no longer for you, But I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I was like hooked. By the time it was over, I was like, oh, that's right. This was just
An
part of a
excerpt.
piece.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I kept picking up on the Fly vibes.
Mm.
You know, kind of like putting something into something and having it transform and having that go awry. But totally, I think this was so fun. I was really excited when I first got it, of course, because it plays with patient logs, and I think that's like a really cool way to tell an epistolary story. When you have the setup of an asylum and you know it's going to be horror, you kind of expect it to go one way. And I love that way. I'm very much on board for that type of horror.
Yeah, ghosts.
Right, ghosts or whatever. But this story completely surprised me. Like a time travel, fly-like asylum horror story was just so unexpected. And I thought, again, very, very well executed. Very much a fan of Duncan's work and excited for some more pieces coming from him this year.
So this story followed another one of my preferred formulas
Tell us.
for horror. Actually, not even for horror, for movies in general. When things set up one way for the longest time,
Uh-huh.
and then something happens, and then it's just balls to the wall crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like the crowning example of this is From Dusk Till Dawn. Okay, if for anyone who hasn't seen that movie, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but you know, I go into most movies blind. I have no idea what the movie's about if I can help it. It was being set up as this like really intense thriller, and then something happens, and then it is different.
Sure.
Right? And in this case, it did kind of the same thing. I'm not talking about some like teen slasher movie where like the first even 30 minutes of the film is just like fun, raucous teenage sex stuff.
Sure.
I'm talking about where it's like a very dark thing going one direction, and then it pivots hard and you just get surprised with you going down a completely different trope or genre or something.
Yeah, totally.
So great job, Duncan. You got me. I really want to read the rest of the piece.
You have a new fan. Yeah, same. I'm very, very pulled in and intrigued. Big fan of it, and was very pleasantly surprised when Duncan reached out.
Also, not that I think this is a great movie, but I did enjoy this movie, and I enjoy lots of bad movies.
Armageddon.
How dare you? This reminded me very much of that movie Intersect.
Intersect?
Intersect. The movie that we started watching together.
Did I fall asleep?
No, you're like, this is boring. And then you left.
Sure.
And yeah, it's just a bunch of fun researchers doing some fun research with stuff and
Okay.
like
Sounds boring.
noodling with time travel. And then once they get their time travel stuff to work, the movie pivots hard and gets crazy. The first half of that movie, wildly forgettable. I actually had to think about it for a little while. But the second half of that, very, very cool. Like it a lot.
Yeah, cool. I love that.
So, but I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into my other favorite time travel movies because we're going to do that in an episode apparently.
Yeah, that will be fun. We're in search of a topic, so I think that would be a great one to
We're
explore.
in search of a topic.
Yeah, we have a little switcheroo happen in this. We don't need to go into this.
We're going to
People
have
don't
a
care
few
about this.
switcheroos
Yeah, that's life.
because you say, hey, this is coming up. And I say, really?
They say you make plans, and Alan laughs. As always, thank you so much to the incredible talents that went into making today's episode possible. Jon C. Cook, Bram Stoker, of course, Tessa McKnight, and Duncan Overton. We're very, very, very grateful for what?
Just, I love the way. Thank you, Bram Stoker. Big fan, you know.
Thanks, Bram. We're very grateful for all of your contributions. And honestly, we love the community aspect of this podcast and how we get to work with so many cool, talented people. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, send us more of your stuff, Bram.
Send us more of your stuff. We will link to everybody on social media if there are social media handles to plug so that you can follow along.
Have you actually read any of his other stuff?
Bram Stoker?
Yeah. I tried reading his mummy book.
We do an episode on the terrible works of Bram Stoker.
Yeah, the Jewel of Seven Stars. I looked into it back when we did our mummies episode, and I was so bored.
Yeah, that's it. Again, despite the historical significance of some of these things, they're from a different era, right? So there's some things John Cook and Bob Dawn can bring to life, and there's some things that, they probably can't.
Okay, so we're going to send the Jewel of 7 Stars to Jon C. Cook.
In the mail?
Yeah, in the fucking mail.
Okay, great. I love mail.
And we're going to see if he can save it.
Sorry, John. This is a new homework assignment for you that you're finding out about it now. On that note, thank you all so much for being here. As always, stay spooky, stay safe, and we will be back soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. If you'd like some bonus content, consider supporting us on Patreon to access our patron-exclusive podcast, Horror Movie Club.
Also head to lunaticsproject.com to check out our spooky merch and apparel.
You can find us at Lunatics Project on Twitter and TikTok, and The Lunatics Project on Instagram and YouTube, where you'll find our short horror films, cemetery tours, and so much more.
And please rate and review. A little feedback goes a long way to help us grow and get more content out there.
Our cover art is by Pilar Kep, and musical bumpers are by Michaela Papa and Jordan Moser.